Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying, he gets reborn in Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, and he gets reborn as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails from the anime Naruto. What will the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails do inside of there?
Danmachi, what if I am Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails? Chapter 1, Waking in Strange Stone. The first thing I noticed was the ground. Cold, uneven, solid against my back in a way asphalt never was. My eyes opened to a ceiling made of stone, ribbed with pale crystal veins that glowed faintly in the dark. The air was thick, dry, carrying the mineral bite of rock dust. I sat up slowly, palms dragging against the floor to feel the grit and roughness. This wasn't a hospital room, not a morgue either. My body didn't ache, no broken bones, no blood sticking my clothes to my skin. I looked down and saw plain gear, black pants, a tunic, boots that fit perfectly. Nothing familiar, nothing of earth. The light, the stone, the silence, it was enough to tell me where I was. I didn't need to test it. I knew. The dungeon, Arario. Danmachi. My lips pressed into a faint grin as I stood. My balance was steady, posture easy, body light. I turned one wrist, flexed my hand, clenched a fist, stronger than I had been before, healthy in a way that didn't feel normal. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped steadily. No monsters yet. The stone here looked rough, uneven, less polished than the deeper levels. I wasn't far in. First 3 floors, maybe the first. A beginner's area. Cute, I muttered, brushing dust from my tunic. That was when I heard it. A voice that wasn't mine. Hello. Quiet, soft, barely formed. I stopped moving, my head tilting just slightly. The sound hadn't touched my ears. It hadn't come from the stone corridors. It was inside. I closed my eyes and stilled myself. The presence was faint, tucked away somewhere in the space that wasn't physical. Not a thought, not an echo of memory, something else. I reached for it. The moment I did, heaviness pressed down on me. Sudden, my vision blurred. My legs gave slightly, shoulder pressing against the wall as I tried to hold on. Great timing, I muttered through the haze, the edges of my lips quirking as if annoyed. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, it wasn't stone above me. The world had shifted. I stood in a space that wasn't natural. A wide plain stretching without end, the floor smooth and shallowly reflective like water without ripples. A sky above, blank and dim, no stars, no sun. It was a place meant for thoughts and nothing else. And in front of me, small, curled, orange, was a creature. A fox. 9 tails behind it, not great sweeping plumes, but small, stubby, curled like a newborn's. Its fur was bright, its eyes closed. It looked no larger than a house cat. Then its ears twitched. It yawned, a high little sound. And when its eyes opened, they were red with slit pupils. The gaze landed on me, confused. The little body shifted, unsteady, tails twitching like it had just learned how to move them. Its voice came out soft, raw, uncertain. Dad. I blinked once, then crouched to its level. You talking to me? Its head tilted, the tails swished. Are you my dad? The tone wasn't hostile. It wasn't cruel, sharp, or vicious. It was pure confusion, the kind of voice only something newborn could have. The legendary 9 tails, the calamity, the monster that in another world terrorized villages. It looked at me like a child waking up for the first time. I leaned my elbows on my knees and rested my chin in one hand. Well, that's a hell of an opening line. The fox blinked, not understanding the words but waiting. I let the silence hang for a moment, then shrugged. I don't think I'm your dad, kid, but I'm what you've got right now. It lowered its head slightly, processing. Then it padded forward, wobbling on short legs, and sat down right in front of me. It looked up. Then, who am I? I studied it. The red eyes, the tiny frame, the 9 tails fanning weakly behind it. I knew exactly who it was. But this wasn't the raging beast from stories. This was the start of it. "You're you," I said plainly. "Brand new, fresh out of the box. Don't worry about the rest yet." The fox tilted its head again, then let out a small huff. "I don't understand." "Yeah, you're not supposed to. You'll figure it out as you go." Its eyes softened slightly, ears twitching. Then, quieter, "I'm not alone." I smiled faintly. "Not unless I take a vacation, and I don't see that happening." The fox shifted closer. Its small head bumped against my knee, tails wrapping clumsily as if trying to hold on. Something tugged in my chest. Not fear, not uncertainty, just a strange weight of responsibility. The Nine Tails had asked if I was its dad. In a way, I might as well be. I stayed there with it for a while, crouched on the smooth, reflective floor. It yawned again, eyes drooping, then curled up against my leg. The warmth of it was faint but steady. "You really are just a baby," I said. "A baby?" "Yeah, small, new, needs sleep and food and someone to keep it from running head first into walls." It blinked slowly. "Then I'm baby." A short laugh escaped me. "Congratulations, first lesson down." Its tails twitched as if that answer satisfied it. Its eyes closed again, tiny body rising and falling with soft breaths. I stayed crouched, one hand resting on my knee, the other dangling loosely. This world was dangerous enough with gods, adventurers, and monsters. Now I had a newborn Nine Tails inside me, a creature that would grow, change, and eventually become exactly what it was meant to be. Except this time, its first words had been a question about a father it didn't have. My eyes stayed on the sleeping fox. There was no way around it. It was mine to raise. Chapter 2, A Goddess in the Shadows. When I opened my eyes, the stone ceiling of the dungeon was gone. I was back in reality, my body slumped against the wall of a passage near the entrance. My head felt clearer, lighter, like the exhaustion had been pulled out. Inside me, faint breaths echoed, soft, steady. The little fox was asleep again. I exhaled slowly, pushing myself up. No monsters had shown up while I was out. That was lucky. "All right," I said quietly, dusting off my hands. "First step, get out of here before something ugly finds me." I kept my pace even as I walked the narrow corridors. My ears picked up distant footsteps of adventurers, laughter, casual chatter echoing from groups moving deeper. None of them crossed my path. Soon, the light shifted. The rough stone walls opened to the exit staircase leading up. When I stepped out, the air changed. Warm sun spilled over me. The sound of people filled the plaza outside Babel Tower, the massive spire rising endlessly into the sky above the dungeon. The contrast was sharp. Merchants shouting about supplies, adventurers showing off magic stones and drop items, priests of various familia trying to pull new members into their ranks. Color, noise, and movement everywhere. I let out a short breath, squinting at the light. The city of Arario stretched around me, walls high, streets branching in every direction. I knew where I needed to go. Hestia. At this point in the timeline, she was small time. Living in Hephaestus's home, no familiar members, overlooked by everyone else. She hadn't met Belle yet. That was my window. I moved into the crowd, weaving through people with ease. A group of adventurers clattered past, laughing about loot. A vendor waved skewers of roasted meat under my nose, shouting, "Fresh, best on this street." I ignored him and kept walking. The streets were alive with the smell of cooking food, iron from smithies, the musk of adventurers who hadn't washed in too long. Every building leaned with character. Old stone, wooden beams, colorful cloth banners. I stopped at a small fountain and glanced at my reflection in the water. My face looked younger, sharper than my old life. Healthy, black hair, cut short, eyes a sharp grey that didn't look tired. No scars, no flaws, the kind of look that passed as confident even when silent. Good enough. I turned and headed down narrower streets. My memory told me where Hestia would be. Hephaestus's home, where she was freeloading until Belle showed up. It took time. I passed smith shops, the clang of hammers against metal ringing out, sparks flying into the street. I walked by children chasing each other, a woman calling them back, a group of priests handing out leaflets. Finally, I stopped in front of a small, quiet building with Hephaestus's crest above the door. My lips tugged upward. This was it. I knocked. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a goddess shorter than I expected. Long twin tails of black hair, bright blue eyes, a white dress edged with blue ribbon. She blinked up at me, confused, then leaned slightly against the door frame. "Yes, who are you?" Her tone wasn't harsh, but wary. She wasn't used to strangers coming for her. I smiled faintly. "Name's not important yet. What's important is you look like someone who hasn't had her big break." Her brows drew down. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about familiar," I said casually. "You don't have one yet. I don't see anyone running around shouting your name in the streets. So either you're keeping it really quiet, or," I let the pause drag, then shrugged, "or you don't have anyone at all." Her cheeks puffed out slightly, annoyed. "That's none of your business." I chuckled. "Oh, it's definitely my business if I'm looking to join one. Let's be real, you're a goddess. You need members. I'm an adventurer. I need a familiar. Match made in heaven." She put her hands on her hips, staring hard. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," I said simply. "I know you're Hestia, goddess of the hearth. I know you're not one of the flashy ones who'll promise me the world. And I know you wouldn't exactly turn away someone knocking at your door." Her expression shifted at that, lips parting slightly in surprise. Then she quickly crossed her arms. "You're pretty full of yourself." I smirked. "Confidence saves lives." Silence stretched. She looked me up and down, probably expecting me to crack. I didn't. I just stood there, relaxed, leaning slightly on the doorframe. Finally, she let out a sigh and stepped back. "Fine, come in." I entered. The room was small, plain. A couch, a table, some shelves with books and odds and ends. Definitely not the luxurious homes of other deities. She turned to face me, arms still crossed. "So, you're really here to join my familiar?" "That's right." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not just making fun of me." "No, you think I'd waste my time climbing across Arario just to joke about it?" She blinked. "You came all the way here just for me." "Obviously." I let the word hang, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her cheeks colored slightly, though she turned away quickly to hide it. You really are strange." "Strange works." She hesitated, then pointed to the couch. "Sit. If you're serious, I'll perform the ceremony. Once I give you my blessing, you'll officially be part of my familiar." I dropped onto the couch easily, leaning back, legs stretched. She frowned at the posture but didn't comment. She moved to the table, pulled out a small needle, and pricked her finger. A drop of divine blood welled, glowing faintly. She walked over, standing behind me. "Take off your shirt," she said. I stripped it off without hesitation. She paused, probably expecting me to flinch at the sudden command, but I didn't. She pressed her finger to my back. The warmth spread immediately, a pulse sinking into me. Lines formed, invisible to my eyes, but I knew what was happening. Falna, the divine script unlocking, connecting me to her. She drew in a quiet breath. "It's working." "Of course it is," I said over my shoulder. When she finished, she stepped back, eyes wide as she looked at the paper she had pressed to my back. "You're level 1, no Excelia yet, but your potential is." She stopped herself, biting her lip. I glanced back at her. "Say it." Her eyes flicked to me, then down. "It's high, higher than most I've seen. You'll grow fast." I smirked faintly. "Good to know." She handed me the sheet. I glanced at the numbers and letters written in divine script. It was all as expected, the blank slate of someone just starting. No boosts yet, but I had something else no one else did. A fox asleep inside me. I put my shirt back on and stood. Well, looks like I'm officially your first. Her cheeks colored again. Don't say it like that. I chuckled, slipping my hands into my pockets. Relax, I meant familiar member, unless you've been keeping secrets. She puffed her cheeks again, glaring. You're impossible. I get that a lot. For the first time, she laughed lightly. The tension dropped. She stepped forward, her hands on her hips. All right then, from now on, you're mine. Don't make me regret it. I met her eyes, calm, unflinching. Not my style. Inside me, faint warmth stirred, like the fox had shifted in its sleep. I ignored it for now. This was the start, Chapter 3, a room of my own. The small room inside Hephaestus's estate was cramped, dim, and smelled faintly of old wood and oil from the forge in the back. The couch I'd sat on earlier was worn, the cushions sagging. The shelves looked like they hadn't been dusted in weeks. It wasn't dirty exactly, just bare, lifeless. Hestia, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She bounced on her toes after finishing the ceremony, her twin tails of hair swaying behind her. Her arms folded behind her back as she leaned forward slightly, blue eyes bright and wide. Hee, you're officially my first familiar member, she said, grinning ear to ear. I can't believe it. I finally have someone. Ha, take that, Hephaestus. I told her I'd find someone. Her laugh was high and light, almost childlike. She twirled once, clearly unable to keep the excitement in. Then she clasped her hands together and looked up at me with a sparkle in her eyes. You're not allowed to leave now, okay? You're stuck with me forever. I raised an eyebrow. Forever, huh? You don't waste time with the fine print, do you? Don't tease me, she said quickly, puffing out her cheeks. She stomped one small foot, though the effect wasn't exactly intimidating. I'm being serious. You can't just leave me after this. Do you know how hard it is for a goddess like me to get a familiar member? You have to stay. You promised. I didn't promise. I stretched lazily, sliding my hands into my pockets. I said I joined. There's a difference. Relax, I'm not going anywhere. But if you're thinking I'm going to sleep on that couch every night, I let my gaze flick toward the sagging cushions. Then you're dreaming. Her lips parted in surprise, then curved downward into a pout. Hey, it's not that bad. I don't have much, okay? I can't afford fancy rooms or big houses like Loki or Freya. You should be grateful I even have a roof at all. Grateful, I smirked faintly. You really want your familiar to start off with gratitude as the first perk. Her face flushed. You're impossible. I let the words roll past me with ease. Her reaction was predictable. She wasn't lying about being broke. At this stage, Hestia had nothing. No money, no headquarters, no supporters. She was surviving off Hephaestus's pity and the scraps she could get. I knew the story. Which meant if I stayed here, I'd be wasting my nights in a shack. Relax, I said finally, shrugging. I'm not ditching you. I'll just find my own place to sleep, somewhere decent. You can keep your couch. You'll probably need it. Her eyes widened, mouth opening in shock. What? You can't just leave after joining. Familiar members live with their god or goddess. That's the rule. It's a guideline. I waved a hand lazily. I'll check in every day, do whatever familiar work you want, get updates, all of that. But I'm not sleeping on something that looks like it'll collapse if I breathe too hard. Don't worry, you'll see me tomorrow. She stomped her foot again, cheeks puffed out to their limit. You're the worst. I was so happy to finally have someone, and you're already abandoning me to go live somewhere else. I'm not abandoning you. I leaned down slightly so my eyes met hers. I just prefer not to live like a beggar when I have the option not to. Simple as that. She glared at me, blue eyes sharp, then sighed and let her shoulders slump. Fine, but you better not skip out on me tomorrow, or the day after, or ever. I smirked faintly and straightened up. Good talk. Her cheeks reddened with frustration as I headed for the door. The streets of Arario were livelier now, lit by lamps as the sun dipped. Adventurers bustled about, some heading for taverns, others showing off drop items in exchange for coin. The clatter of boots, laughter, and shouting filled the air. I cut through the crowd, heading for a quieter district. I knew from memory where a decent hotel was, a clean one, affordable but not cheap enough to be suspicious. It took 20 minutes of walking, but eventually I spotted it. A three-story building with lanterns glowing warmly in the windows. The sign above the door read Moonstone Inn. Inside, the lobby was modest but polished. Wooden beams supported the ceiling. A stone fireplace sat in one corner with low flames flickering, and the scent of cooked food drifted faintly from the kitchen. A few travelers sat scattered in chairs, talking quietly. I approached the counter. The innkeeper, a middle-aged man with thinning hair, looked up from his ledger. "Room for one." "Yeah," I said, sliding a handful of Varleys across the counter. I had enough starter money left on me when I woke up here. I'd ration it carefully until adventuring brought more. Private, quiet. He nodded, counted the coins, and handed me a key. "Second floor, end of the hall. Meals are extra." "Got it." I took the key and went upstairs. The room was small but tidy. A bed with clean sheets, a table, a chair, a window looking down onto the street. More than enough. I locked the door, tossed the key onto the table, and sat on the bed. The silence pressed in. That was when I heard it again. MMH. Soft, drowsy, the sound of something stirring. I leaned back, closing my eyes. "You awake in there?" There was a pause, then a tiny, confused voice. "You." "Yeah, me. Looks like we can talk without the dream space this time." A faint shift moved in the back of my mind. The presence was clearer now, warmer. The small fox. "Where?" "You're in me," I said simply. "Inside. Don't overthink it. We can talk like this whenever you're awake, apparently." The voice was hesitant, still childish. "Who are you?" I smiled faintly, leaning back on one elbow. "Right. I didn't give you a name, did I? Let's fix that. I'm Shiro, that's me." The fox repeated it slowly, as if tasting the sound. "Shiro." "Yeah, that's right." I tilted my head back against the wall. "And you? Can't keep calling you Fox all day. You need a name." There was silence, then a soft sound of confusion. "Name." "A name's what people call you. It's yours. When someone says it, you know they mean you. Simple." The presence hesitated, unsure. I tapped my chin. "How about Kurama?" The word echoed in the space between us. The fox perked, tails twitching faintly in my head. "Who, RMA?" "Yeah, Kurama, that's you now." There was a pause, then a faint warmth spread from the presence. "Kurama." I smirked faintly. "Guess you like it." "Yes," came the soft reply. The tone carried a tiny hint of pride, childish but sure. "Good, then it's official. You're Kurama, I'm Shiro. Now we're not strangers anymore." Kurama's breathing in my mind was steady, slow. "Dad." I let out a short breath, not bothering to correct him. Close enough. He made a small sound of approval, then curled up again in the corner of my mind. I felt it, tiny, soft, like a presence resting. I leaned back fully on the bed, hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling. A hotel room, a goddess waiting, and now a fox with 9 tails sleeping inside me. Not a bad start. Chapter 4. The Goddess Complains. The morning came with light cutting across the wooden floor of the inn-room. The sounds of Arario were already alive outside. Wagons rattling down cobbled streets, merchants shouting over one another as they set up stalls, boots clattering from adventurers heading toward Babel. I sat up slowly, rubbed the back of my neck, and stretched until my shoulders popped. The sheets were clean, the bed soft enough, nothing sagging like the couch in Hester's place. No regrets about staying here instead. Inside me, Kurama was quiet. Not gone, just curled up again. His small presence was steady, a soft warmth in the back of my mind. The kid was still new, still needing long stretches of rest. "Sleep it off," I muttered under my breath. I washed my face in the basin, laced up my boots, then headed downstairs. The innkeeper barely glanced up from the ledger as I passed through the lobby. The air outside carried the smell of fried bread and grilled meat drifting from food stalls, mixed with the sharper tang of metal from nearby smithies. The city was always busy. Children ran in groups, laughing and dodging between carts. Women called out prices for vegetables and cloth. Adventurers with weapons strapped to their backs moved in packs, some boasting loudly about last night's fights in the dungeon. I bought a hot meat skewer from a vendor, bit into it, and chewed as I walked. He tried to upsell me on more, 3 for a discount adventurer, but I waved him off. I had somewhere to be. Hephaestus's home wasn't far. I'd memorized the path yesterday. 20 minutes of weaving through streets, and I reached the familiar building with its crest above the door. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, sharper. This time a shrill voice rang from inside. You, where were you all night? The door slammed open. Hestia stood there, her twin tails bouncing with the force of her movements, her blue eyes wide and furious. She had both hands balled into fists at her sides, her cheeks puffed out to the limit, and her face flushed red. Do you have any idea how worried I was?" she yelled. "My first familiar member ever, and he disappears the very first night. Do you know what that looks like? Everyone's going to think I scared you off." I lifted the half-finished skewer in greeting. "Morning." "Don't you morning me," she snapped, stomping one small foot. "I waited and waited, and you never came back. Hephaestus saw me sitting there all alone and asked where my familiar member was, and then she laughed at me. Laughed. She said, 'Of course no one would stay with you, Hestia.' Can you imagine how humiliating that was?" I took another bite of the skewer, chewed, swallowed. "Sounds about right." Her jaw dropped, her eyes almost popping out. "WH what? You?" She stamped her foot again, twin tails whipping behind her. "You're the worst. Rude. Unbelievably rude." "Relax." I leaned one shoulder casually against the doorway. "I didn't ditch you. I just got a room somewhere else. This way you don't have to share your couch, and I don't have to pretend it's comfortable. Win-win." Her face turned redder. "That's not the point. Familiar members are supposed to live with their goddess. That's how it works. You can't just go off and—" She flailed her arms in small circles, words tripping over each other, "and stay in a hotel like some stranger." "I can, and I did," I smirked faintly. "You should be thanking me, actually. Less food to share, more space for you. Think about it." Her lips wobbled in outrage. "No, no, no, no. You can't just spin it like that." "Watch me." "Ugh!" She dragged her hands down her face dramatically, groaning like the world was ending. Then she peeked at me between her fingers. "Are you really not leaving me?" I raised a brow. What did I just say? "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Her shoulders sagged, relief flooding her posture. Then she quickly straightened, trying to mask it, and jabbed a finger up at me. "Okay, but you still broke the rule. Familiar members and gods are supposed to stick together. I'll let it go this time, but from now on, you have to tell me if you're leaving. Got it?" I lifted my free hand lazily. "Sure." She squinted at me, clearly unconvinced by my tone, but she let out a small huff and crossed her arms anyway. "Fine." I finished the skewer and tossed the stick into the waste bin near the door. Stepping inside, I glanced around the room again. Same bare shelves, same sagging couch. The place hadn't changed overnight. "You really live like this?" I asked, half amused. Her face flamed again. "Don't say it like that. I told you I don't have anything. No money, no big mansion like Loki, no giant familiar, nothing. I'm doing my best here." "You're broke." She stomped again. "Stop saying it so bluntly." "It's accurate. You're insufferable." "And you're dramatic," I shot back easily. She glared, puffed her cheeks again, then finally collapsed onto the couch with a loud huff. She hugged one cushion to her chest like a shield. "You're really going to drive me crazy." I sat across from her, leaning back comfortably. "You'll survive." For a moment she pouted at me from over the cushion, her blue eyes narrowed. Then she sighed, the pout softening into something smaller. I guess I'm glad you came back. Of course I did. Her cheeks pinked faintly. Don't say it so easily. Why not? It's true. Because it makes it sound like I was worried for nothing. You were, I said. She let out a squeak of outrage, but instead of answering, she buried her face in the cushion. The tension finally drained out of the room after a while. Hestia peeked up at me again, her voice softer now. So, what's your plan? Plan? You're my only familiar member. You can't just wander around doing whatever. We need to decide what to do, where to go, how to get stronger. I nodded slowly. Fair, then let's start simple. First step is you stop worrying about whether I'll vanish. Second step, I go to the guild and get us registered officially. Third, I get us money. Her eyes widened. Money. Yeah, you want better than this shack, right? Money gets us there. You can't run a familiar on hope alone. Her hands tightened on the cushion, her face softening. You really mean that? Every word. Her lips twitched, fighting a smile. Then she set the cushion aside and sat up straighter. Okay, then I'll hold you to it. Don't think you can slack off just because you talk big. I expect results. I grinned faintly. You'll get them. She blinked at me for a moment, then puffed her cheeks again. You're way too confident. I know. We spent the rest of the morning in back and forth like that. She asked questions about me, where I came from, why I picked her, what I was planning to do. I gave her just enough answers to keep her satisfied without opening any doors I didn't want to. By the time I stood to leave, she had finally relaxed, sitting cross-legged on the couch and fiddling with the ribbon on her dress. Don't forget, she said, looking up at me seriously. Come back tomorrow too, no excuses. I gave her a lazy salute. Sure. She puffed her cheeks again. I mean it. Yeah, yeah. I opened the door, sunlight spilling in. See you, goddess. Her cheeks flushed at the title, and she quickly turned away with a huff. Just go already. I stepped out, the door clicking shut behind me. Chapter 5. The Guild's Record. The sun was already climbing higher by the time I stepped out of Hestia's place. The city hummed with its usual rhythm. Merchants called out their prices in loud, practiced voices, hawking everything from bread loaves to cheap weapons. Adventurers with mismatched gear laughed as they counted coins in the street. A group of children darted past me, chasing after each other with sticks, their mothers calling them back before they got underfoot of a horse-drawn cart. I adjusted my tunic, brushed off a bit of dust, and started toward the guild. The Babel Tower loomed at the city's center, its white stone walls gleaming in the sunlight, tall enough to break the clouds if you craned your neck far enough. The guild sat at its base, where every adventurer eventually had to go. Registration, paperwork, quests, information, it was all run through them. The walk wasn't short, but I didn't mind weaving through the busy streets. Every corner had something to catch the eye. Blacksmith shops with apprentices hammering steel, sparks flying out onto the street. Taverns already airing out their shutters from last night's drinks. Priests handing out leaflets to passing adventurers with promises of blessings. Kurama stirred faintly in my head as I walked. A soft sound, like a yawn, brushed at my awareness. Ashira. Yeah, I said quietly under my breath. We're going. The guild. It's where adventurers make things official. I'll explain more later. A guild. You'll get it eventually. Just rest. The small presence gave a sleepy huff before quieting again. The closer I got to Babel, the denser the crowd became. Merchants shouted louder, adventurers gathered in larger groups, guild officials in uniforms patrolled to keep things from spiraling into chaos. The wide plaza at the base of the tower was packed with people. The guild's main building stood like an annex at Babel's base. Stone walls, wide glass windows, banners draped along the sides. Inside, it was no less crowded. The moment I stepped in, the air hit me with noise. Dozens of voices overlapped, adventurers arguing with clerks, others laughing over drinks in the side lounge, the scratch of quills over parchment, the thump of boots across polished floors. Wooden counters stretched in a long line at the front, each one staffed by a clerk in guild uniform. I took it in quickly. The uniforms were familiar: white shirts, vests, neat skirts or trousers, tidy appearances. The clerks were all business, but their patience varied depending on who they were dealing with. My gaze caught on one. Short brown hair, emerald green eyes, half-elven ears. She adjusted her glasses as she spoke with an adventurer at the counter, her expression calm but firm. When he slumped in defeat, she offered him a patient smile and dismissed him politely. Einar Tuel. Exactly who I needed. I made my way through the line, ignoring the glares from adventurers muttering about waiting their turn. When the last man stepped aside, I leaned casually on her counter. Morning. She blinked, surprised, then straightened slightly. Good morning. You're new, aren't you? Sharp eye, I said with a faint smirk. Yeah, first time here, looking to register. Her eyes softened in understanding, her voice taking on the patient cadence she used with rookies. Of course. Then let me be the first to welcome you to the guild. My name is Einar Tuel, and I'll be helping you through the registration process. May I have your name? Shira. She noted it down neatly in her ledger. And you're familiar. Hester. Her quill froze briefly over the parchment. Her green eyes flicked up, surprise flashing across her face before she masked it. Hester. That's right. Her lips parted slightly, then closed as she straightened her glasses. I see. Then you're her first. Correct again. She let out a quiet breath, something between relief and curiosity. I admit I wasn't expecting her to find someone so quickly. I smirked, surprise. Her cheeks colored faintly as she cleared her throat. Yes, well, let's continue. She pulled a stack of forms from under the counter and slid them toward me. Please fill these out. Name, familiar, personal details, and any prior experience. It's all required for our records. I glanced down at the papers, then back up at her. You're really trusting random adventurers with paperwork, to be honest. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. We trust that familiar deities will oversee their members properly. Lying on these forms would only harm you in the long run. Fair enough. I picked up the quill and scribbled through the forms quickly, my handwriting neat but fast. Name, Shiro. Familiar, Hestia. Prior experience, none. It was simple enough. Einar watched, her gaze sharp. When I finished and slid them back, she scanned them carefully, then filed them into a folder. All right, she said, smoothing her skirt. With that, you are now officially registered as an adventurer under Hestia Familiar. Congratulations. I leaned on the counter. That's it. No tests, no trials, no dramatic speeches. Her lips twitched faintly in what might have been amusement, but she quickly straightened. This is the standard procedure. All adventurers are required to check in here regularly, and I strongly recommend you come to me for advice. As your advisor, I can help you understand the dangers of the dungeon and guide your growth properly. I raised a brow. Advisor, you're assigning yourself already. She blinked. Every new adventurer is paired with a guild advisor. It's mandatory. Mandatory, huh? I smirked. And I just happened to get you. Lucky me. Her cheeks colored again, and she quickly looked down at her ledger. Don't misunderstand. It's just chance. Now, do you have any questions about your responsibilities? Plenty, but let's start simple. Money, how fast can I earn it? Her green eyes lifted back to mine, steady now. That depends on your ability to survive the dungeon. As a new adventurer, you should start on the first floor. Gather magic stones and low-level drop items. It's dangerous to go further without experience. First floor, huh? I tilted my head. Not exactly thrilling. Thrilling isn't the goal, she said firmly. Survival is. I chuckled softly. You sound like you've said that 100 times. Her lips curved faintly in a small smile. At least 100. All right, I said, straightening. I'll play along. First floor it is. Good, she scribbled notes into her ledger again. One more thing, report back regularly. If you disappear, the guild can't protect you. I'll keep that in mind. Einar nodded, then offered me a small stack of pamphlets. These explain basic safety, monster types on the first floors, and recommended equipment. Please read them carefully. I took the stack, flipping through the first page briefly before tucking them into my belt. Sure, bedtime stories. Her cheeks colored slightly again, and she pressed her lips together, clearly resisting the urge to scold me. Just be careful, all right. I grinned faintly. Don't worry, I'm not planning on dying anytime soon. Her expression softened despite herself. Good, then welcome to the dungeon, Shiro. I stepped out of the guild building into the bright plaza again, the noise of Arario washing over me. The paperwork was done. The records were official. Hestia Familia had a name in the guild now. Kurama stirred faintly inside me. What happened? Registration. Official now. Official. Means people know we exist. Ah. The small voice faded again into soft breaths. I adjusted my belt, glanced up at Babel stretching into the sky, and smiled faintly. Showtime, Chapter 6, The Fox's Power. The plaza outside the guild was loud, but my feet carried me toward Babel without hesitation. The tower's white stone gleamed under the midday sun, its size almost insulting, stretching endlessly upward. At its base, adventurers streamed in and out of the entrance like a river. I slid past a group of loud rookies boasting about their kills, ignored a vendor trying to sell overpriced health potions, and made my way down the wide staircase that led into the dungeon. The change was immediate. The light dimmed, swallowed by stone. The walls and floor were rough, veins of crystal glowing faintly blue in the shadows. The air grew cooler, thick with mineral dampness. My boots echoed on the stone as I descended. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked around. First floor. Wide passages, branching corridors, ceilings high enough to keep you from feeling claustrophobic. This was the beginner's zone, where green adventurers cut their teeth against monsters that wouldn't eat them alive if they made one mistake. Still, the warning rang in my head from Einar's words earlier. Thrilling isn't the goal. Survival is. I pulled a short sword I'd bought from a vendor yesterday. Cheap steel, good balance, nothing fancy. My grip tightened around the hilt. All right, I muttered. Let's see what this place has for me. The first sound came minutes later. A faint squelch like wet clay tearing apart. The wall ahead bulged, cracked, then split open. A goblin tumbled out. Green skin, crooked teeth, small claws. Its yellow eyes locked onto me, and it let out a screech before charging. I didn't bother waiting. I stepped forward, swung my blade in a clean arc, and cut through its neck. The body collapsed, fading into ash as the magic stone clinked against the floor. I picked it up, turning the small crystal in my hand. Not worth much, but a start. Another goblin spawned further down, then another. The first floor never ran out. I cut them down one by one. Step, swing, finish. My body moved smoother than I expected, balance sharp, reflexes fast. I wasn't some prodigy, but I wasn't stumbling like a greenhorn either. Kurama stirred faintly in the back of my mind. What are those? Goblins, monsters. Think of them like toys that bite back. Toys. Bad toys. You smash them, they disappear. Easy. Kurama made a small, thoughtful noise. 2 hours passed in the stone halls. I filled a pouch with magic stones, my clothes marked with faint dirt but no blood. Sweat clung to my back, but my breathing stayed steady. Then I heard it. A deeper sound, heavier. The wall ahead split, but this time it wasn't a goblin that stepped out. It was bigger, taller than me by half a head. Muscles corded under grey skin, its frame hulking. Its jaw opened wide, sharp teeth bared, and a guttural growl rumbled from its throat. A dungeon lizardman. Not supposed to be here. Lizardmen were at least floor 6, not floor 1. My grip tightened around my sword. Well, that's not in the brochure. The lizardman moved, fast, too fast for its size. Its clawed hand swung, and I barely twisted aside before it slammed into the wall, stone cracking under the force. I slashed at its side. The blade dug in shallowly, scraping scales. It didn't cut deep. The lizardman snarled, twisting its body, tail whipping. It caught me across the stomach and threw me back into the wall. Pain flared through my ribs. I hit the ground and rolled, forcing myself up again with a grunt. All right, this one's not a toy. Kurama stirred in panic. Shiro. I know, stay calm. The lizardman lunged again. I ducked under its claws, slashed upward, but the sword barely left a scratch. My weapon wasn't good enough, and my strength wasn't enough to match it. Another swing came. I raised my blade to block. The impact jolted through my arms, rattling my bones, and the sword nearly slipped from my grip. Not good. Kurama's voice rang sharp and frightened. You'll get hurt. Not planning on it, I hissed through clenched teeth. The lizardman pressed forward, relentless. My body moved on instinct, dodging, deflecting, but every hit was heavier, every swing faster. I wasn't going to win like this. Shiro, Kurama's voice rang again, louder this time. Let me help. I stumbled back, chest heaving. Help how? I don't know, but I can. The lizardman roared and charged again. I braced myself, sword raised. Then warmth spread in my chest. A rush, sudden and fierce, flooding into my limbs. My vision sharpened, edges glowing faintly red. My skin prickled as energy crackled under it. I blinked once, chakra. Kurama's chakra. The lizardman's claw came down. My body moved before I thought. My sword snapped up, glowing faintly red with the energy flowing into it. I slashed. This time, the blade cut clean. The lizardman howled as the sword sliced through its arm. Blood sprayed across the stone, sizzling faintly against the glow. I stepped in, pivoted, and slashed again. The chakra carried me forward, my strength amplified beyond normal. The blade tore through its chest, carving deep. The monster staggered, eyes wide in shock. Then it collapsed, dissolving into ash. Its magic stone clattered to the floor, larger than the goblin's, glowing brightly. I stood still, chest heaving. The faint red glow flickered around my body, then receded, fading back into warmth before vanishing entirely. Kurama's small voice echoed in my head. Did it work? I lowered my sword, staring at the dissolving remains. Yeah, it worked. There was silence for a moment. Then Kurama let out a small sound, somewhere between pride and relief. Good. I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders. My arms ached, my ribs still throbbed from the earlier hit, but I was standing. Alive, victorious. Not bad for your first time, I said quietly. Kurama gave a small, pleased huff, before curling back up again. I bent down, picked up the lizardman's magic stone, and slipped it into my pouch. My grip tightened around the hilt of my sword. The first floor wasn't supposed to have something like that, but I was still here. And now I knew what Kurama could do. Chapter 7. A fox at the table. The last traces of the lizardman's body faded into ash, leaving only its magic stone glowing faintly on the ground. My sword arm ached, my ribs still burned from the earlier hit, but my grip was steady. I bent down, picked up the stone, and slid it into my pouch with the others. The bag felt heavy against my hip now, not bad for a first dive. Still, my instincts told me enough. It was time to head back. The lizardman wasn't supposed to be here. That was a problem for later. For now, I wasn't going to tempt fate by sticking around. Heading out, I muttered under my breath. Kurama stirred faintly. Tired. Yeah, me too. The newborn's presence sank into quiet again, leaving me with only the sound of my boots on stone. The climb back up was uneventful. A few goblins spawned along the way, but they barely slowed me down. One swing each, and they dissolved into ash. The faint glow of crystals in the walls lit the way until I reached the staircase. When I stepped out into the open plaza at Babel's base, the change in atmosphere hit me like always. The noise of Arario crashed back in, adventurers laughing, merchants shouting, the clink of coins, the smell of food stalls frying meat in oil. Sunlight made me squint after the dim of the dungeon. I adjusted my pouch and walked straight toward the guild entrance. Inside, the guild lobby was just as crowded as earlier. Adventurers lined up at the counters, clerks scribbled frantically, and groups gathered around tables comparing loot. The sound of boots and voices echoed through the wide space. I ignored the others and stepped right into Einar Tule's line again. She spotted me almost immediately. Her eyes widened slightly as I approached, and she waved another adventurer aside before I even said anything. "You're back already?" she asked, blinking. "Already," I leaned casually on the counter. "I was down there for a while." "It's only been a few hours," she said, straightening her glasses. "Most new adventurers don't come back the same day they register." "I'm not most." She sighed softly, but there was a faint trace of relief in her expression. "Well, let's see what you brought." I untied the pouch and emptied it onto the counter. Magic stones clattered across the wood, small ones from goblins and kobolds, and the larger one from the lizardmen. The glow of the big stone drew a few curious looks from nearby adventurers. Einar's brows furrowed as she picked it up. "This is from a lizardman." Sharp eye again. Her gaze snapped to mine. "That shouldn't be on the first floor." "Tell me about it," I said dryly, but it was there. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she studied me carefully. "And you managed to kill it." I smirked faintly. "Standing here, are I?" Her shoulders relaxed slightly, though her eyes stayed sharp. She set the stone aside with the others. "I'll make a note of it for the guild records. Abnormal monster spawns are rare but not unheard of. Still, it's unusual for a beginner to survive one. Guess I'm special." Her cheeks colored faintly, but she turned quickly to the ledger. "Let's total this up." She counted the stones one by one, weighed them, and scribbled figures down. Finally, she reached into a drawer and set a small stack of varlies on the counter. "Here, this is your payment." I swept the coins into my hand, testing the weight. Enough to last comfortably for now. More than enough for what I had in mind. "Not bad," I said. "I'll be back tomorrow with more." Her green eyes met mine again, steady but soft. "Just be careful, all right. Don't take unnecessary risks." I gave her a lazy salute. "Got it, advisor." She sighed, but I caught the corner of her lips twitch upward before she looked back down at her notes. The streets of Arario welcomed me again as I stepped out of the guild. The weight of varlies in my pouch gave every step a little more satisfaction. Food stalls lined the streets near the plaza, their scents competing for attention. I didn't hesitate. One by one, I stopped and bought whatever looked good. Skewers of grilled meat, fried bread stuffed with vegetables, roasted nuts, a basket of dumplings, even a whole roasted chicken wrapped in paper. By the time I was done, both hands were full with bags. Adventurers glanced at me as I passed, some amused, some jealous, but I ignored them. This wasn't for show. I headed back to the Moonstone Inn, climbed the stairs to my room, and locked the door behind me. The moment I set the food down on the table, a small voice piped up inside me. "What's that?" "Food," I said, unwrapping a dumpling and taking a bite. The savory filling burst with flavor. "A food?" "Yeah, what you eat to stop being hungry. Watch." I took another slow bite, exaggerating it just to mess with him. There was silence for a moment. Then a faint pressure rippled inside me, and before I could process it, light shimmered in the air above the table. I froze, dumpling halfway to my mouth. And then Kurama was there. Small, chibi-sized. His orange fur glowed faintly, his 9 tiny tails flicking nervously behind him. His ears twitched, his red eyes wide and unblinking as he stared at the pile of food. He blinked once, then his nose twitched. Hungry. I leaned back in my chair, raising a brow. Well, look who decided to show up. Kurama padded forward clumsily across the table, almost tripping over his own tails, and sniffed at the chicken. His eyes sparkled. Can I? I smirked faintly. You're asking me, first time for everything. He looked up at me with wide, hopeful eyes. Go ahead. The moment the words left my mouth, he lunged. His tiny jaws clamped onto the roasted chicken, and he began gnawing furiously, his tails wagging wildly behind him. The sight was ridiculous, this newborn fox tearing into a bird half his size, but his pure enthusiasm made it hard not to laugh. I leaned an elbow on the table and watched him struggle. You know, usually people start with smaller bites. Good, he mumbled around a mouthful, crumbs scattering across the table. Yeah, I can see that. I reached over, tore off a piece of bread, and handed it to him. He took it eagerly, stuffing it into his mouth before tackling another dumpling. His tails wagged faster with each bite, and small crumbs stuck to his fur. His red eyes kept flicking between me and the food, as if checking whether I'd take it away. Relax, I said, tearing into a skewer of my own. It's all yours. I bought enough for both of us. Kurama paused mid-chew, staring at me. Then he wagged his tails even harder. Thank you. Don't mention it. We ate together for a while. He made a mess. Crumbs everywhere, grease smudged into his fur, but his obvious joy was worth it. I tossed him bits of roasted meat, dumplings, even nuts, and he devoured everything like he hadn't eaten in days. By the time the table was picked clean, Kurama was sprawled on his back, belly round, tails twitching lazily. He let out a tiny, satisfied sigh. Full. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Welcome to the club. His eyes drooped, his small body relaxing completely. Within seconds, his breathing evened out. He had fallen asleep right there on the table, crumbs still clinging to his fur. I shook my head faintly, a small smirk tugging at my lips. Then I carefully scooped him up, placed him on the pillow of the bed, and lay down beside him. For the first time since I'd arrived in this world, the room felt less empty. Chapter 8. Steel and Coin. The morning light spilled across the small hotel room, warming the sheets. I stretched out, the faint creak of the mattress under me, then sat up slowly. Kurama was still asleep on the pillow beside me, his chibi form curled up into a small orange ball. His 9 little tails twitched faintly with each breath, his belly still round from last night's meal. Crumbs clung to his fur. I leaned back on one arm and glanced at him. You eat like you've been starved for a week. He stirred, one ear twitching, before giving a soft yawn. His red eyes blinked open, hazy. Hungry again. I smirked faintly. Of course you are. He wriggled upright, wobbling on his short legs. Food. I reached over to the table where I'd left a basket from last night. Only a few roasted nuts remained. I plucked one out, tossed it toward him. He snapped it up midair with surprising speed, tails wagging as he chewed. All right, you're not starving for now, I said, tying my boots. But I need gear. Can't keep fighting with cheap scrap metal. He tilted his head, crumbs sticking to his cheek fur. Gear. Stuff that keeps me alive. Armor, better weapons, you'll see. Kurama blinked once, then curled back down on the pillow, tail tips twitching. Bring food. I smirked again. I'll bring food. I left him sprawled out on the bed, locked the door behind me, and headed into the streets of Arario. The market district was already buzzing when I arrived. The clang of hammers striking anvils rang out from the smithy row, sparks flying as apprentices worked. Merchants shouted over each other, voices carrying above the crowd. The air was thick with the smell of iron, oil, and cooked meat from nearby food stalls. Armor shops and weapon stands lined the street, each with displays out front. Blades hung on racks, breastplates gleaming in the sun, shields stacked in piles. I stopped at the first stall, a cramped shop run by a dwarf with soot on his beard and arms like tree trunks. His display was loaded with swords of varying quality, most of them clearly mass-produced. I picked one up, tested the balance, swung it lightly. Too heavy at the tip, clumsy. The dwarf squinted at me. Good eye. That one's for rookies who just want cheap steel, doesn't suit you. I raised a brow. You think you know what suits me? He grunted. I've been selling blades longer than you've been alive, boy. You want something real, you'll pay for it. Not looking for decorative trash, I said easily, setting the sword back down. I want something that won't snap the first time I swing it at something bigger than me. The dwarf's eyes narrowed, then he chuckled. All right, you've got a mouth, I'll give you that. Come back when you've got more Varleys. My good stock isn't for greenhorn purses. I smirked faintly. Then you'll see me again soon. I moved on. The second shop was larger, with glass windows and polished armor gleaming on stands. A young human clerk greeted me immediately, her smile trained but polite. Welcome, adventurer, looking for equipment. We have a wide range of beginner sets, swords, daggers, light armor, affordable prices, and guaranteed durability for the first few months of use. I raised a brow. Guaranteed durability for a few months, that's your sales pitch. She flushed slightly. WL, that's standard for starter gear. Not my style, I said, brushing past. Her sigh followed me out. The third place I stopped was smaller, quieter, tucked between two larger smithies. A simple wooden sign hung above the door, and the inside smelled strongly of oiled steel. Behind the counter sat a young woman with long brown hair tied back in a braid, her hands resting on the hilt of a blade she was polishing. She glanced up as I entered, her eyes sharp, then nodded in greeting. Looking for something. A sword that won't break, I said, scanning the racks. Her lips twitched faintly. Then you're in the right place. My father makes them. No cheap mass production here. I picked up one of the blades on the rack. It was clean, balanced, lighter than the junk I'd been using. The edge gleamed, sharp enough to cut paper. I gave it a few test swings. Smooth, fast, the weight just right. How much? I asked, spinning it once in my grip. 5,000 Varleys. I whistled softly. Confident, aren't you? She smirked. Quality costs. I set the blade down, leaning casually on the counter. 3,000. Her brows shot up. You're haggling. It's worth every coin I asked. Sure, but I don't have infinite coins. 3,000, and I'll spread the word that you're selling blades that actually work. Free advertising. She crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. 4,500. 3,500. 4,200. I grinned faintly. Deal. Her lips parted in surprise, then she sighed, shaking her head. You're a handful. Fine, 4,200. I slid the Varleys across the counter, and she passed me the sword in return. The grip felt right in my hand. Pleasure doing business, I said with a smirk. She rolled her eyes, but smirked faintly back. Next was armor. I wasn't planning on walking into deeper floors dressed like a civilian. I found a leatherworker's shop a few streets down, run by an older elf with silver hair. The displays showed hardened leather chest pieces, braces, and greaves, all sturdy and well-stitched. I tested a few sets, eventually settling on a black leather chest plate reinforced with iron along the ribs. Light enough to move in, strong enough to take a hit. The elf adjusted it to fit my frame, muttering about posture and straps the entire time. How much? I asked. 6,000 Varleys. I didn't bother haggling this time. Armor wasn't something to gamble on. I paid and strapped it on fully, testing the fit. Comfortable, flexible. With sword at my side and armor on, I stepped back into the street. The weight was reassuring. For the first time, I felt properly equipped for what lay ahead. By the time I returned to the Moonstone Inn, the sun was lowering. I carried a bag of skewers, dumplings, and fresh bread in one hand, Kurama's promised food. I pushed open the door to my room, set the bag on the table, and glanced at the bed. Kurama was sitting up already, his ears perked, his red eyes locked onto the food bag like a predator spotting prey. His tails wagged furiously. "Food," he squeaked, bouncing on the pillow. I smirked. "You've got one-track mind, don't you?" He hopped down onto the table clumsily, nearly tripping over his tails, and pressed his nose against the bag. "Open it, open it." "Yeah, yeah." I pulled out the skewers, laid the bread on the table, unwrapped the dumplings. Kurama immediately lunged for the skewers, tiny teeth tearing into the meat. He wagged his tails furiously with each bite, grease smearing his fur again. I leaned back in my chair, breaking a dumpling in half and popping it into my mouth. "Slow down, or you'll choke." "Worth it," he mumbled around a mouthful. I chuckled, tossing him a piece of bread. He snapped it up, chewed happily, then sprawled across the table with a satisfied sigh. "Better than chicken," he said sleepily. "High praise," I said. His tails twitched lazily, his eyes drooping. "Shiro." "Yeah. Don't forget food tomorrow." I smirked faintly. "I'll keep it in mind." He yawned once, then curled up again, crumbs clinging to his fur. Within seconds, he was asleep. I leaned back, arms crossed, the faint glow of the city filtering through the window. Proper sword, proper armor, and a fox that couldn't stop eating. Not a bad day. Chapter 9. Testing the Edge. The streets of Arario were still busy when I stepped out of the Moonstone Inn, sword strapped at my hip, leather armor snug across my chest. Sunlight glinted off the polished metal of the city gates, and adventurers filled the roads, groups moving together toward Babel Tower. I adjusted the strap of the chest plate, testing the fit again. Comfortable, flexible, light enough to move quickly, but solid enough that a stray claw wouldn't tear me apart in one hit. The new sword at my side was smooth, balanced, much better than the junk I'd carried before. Kurama's voice piped up in my head, drowsy but curious. "Where going?" "Dungeon," I said, weaving through the crowd. Time to see if the shopping spree was worth it. "A fight again." "Exactly." He gave a small hum, tails twitching faintly in the back of my mind. "Bring food back." I smirked faintly. "You've got priorities. Don't worry, I'll bring food." The little fox made a satisfied noise and went quiet again. The base of Babel loomed ahead, sunlight flashing off its white stone. Adventurers clustered around the entrance, laughing, arguing, sharpening weapons. A few priests from different familia stood nearby, shouting blessings over their members before they descended. I ignored the noise, walked straight down the staircase, and let the dungeon swallow me again. The air shifted immediately, cool, heavy, carrying the faint mineral scent of stone. Crystals embedded in the walls glowed faintly, lighting the wide passages. My boots echoed against the ground as I moved. I rested a hand on my sword hilt, scanning the branching corridors. The first floor was wide open, but monsters spawned everywhere. It didn't take long. A wet squelch echoed from the wall ahead. The stone bulged, cracked, and a goblin tumbled out with a screech. Its yellow eyes locked onto me as it scrambled forward, claws raised. I drew my sword in a smooth motion, the blade flashing under the glow of the crystals. The goblin lunged. I stepped sideways, swung once, and the sword cut clean through its chest. Ash scattered, and the magic stone clinked to the ground. I bent down, scooped it up, and slipped it into my pouch. "Better," I muttered, giving the sword a small spin. "Much better." The next corridor brought two kobolds. Their growls echoed as they lunged, claws flashing. I gripped the sword with both hands, angled the blade, and let the first rush me. It swiped low. I stepped back, pivoted, and drove the blade straight through its neck. The second jumped immediately, jaws snapping. I twisted, yanked the sword free, and swung upward in one smooth motion. The blade carved across its chest, cutting deep. It crumpled into ash, leaving its stone behind. Kurama's voice murmured faintly, "Not scary." "Not these ones." I wiped the blade clean against my armor. "Too slow, too weak, just warm-ups." The newborn fox made a curious sound, "But bigger ones scary." "Yeah, bigger ones need work. But that's why I bought this," I said, tapping the hilt of my new sword. Kurama was quiet a moment, then muttered, "Still hungry." I chuckled under my breath. "Of course you are. Survive now, eat later." Hours passed in the stone halls. I cut through goblins, kobolds, the occasional dungeon lizard no bigger than my torso. My pouch filled steadily with magic stones, their glow faint against the leather. Every fight felt smoother. The new sword cut clean, the armor turned away scratches that would have drawn blood yesterday. I moved quicker, more confident with every strike. At one point, 3 goblins spawned at once. They rushed me, screeching. I grinned, sidestepped the first, slashed across its stomach, kicked the second in the face, and drove my blade through the third's chest. Ash scattered around me in a haze. Kurama's small voice piped up again. "You laugh." "Yeah," I spun the blade once before sheathing it. "They're too easy. Feels good." "A like game." "Not a game," I corrected, "but close enough." The fox hummed thoughtfully, tails twitching faintly. By the 4th hour, my pouch was heavy, my body warm with sweat but still steady. I stopped in a wide chamber, leaning briefly against the wall, and pulled out a flask of water. Kurama spoke softly, "Tired?" "Not yet, just pacing myself." "What's pacing?" "It means I don't burn out too fast." I took a long sip, then capped the flask. The newborn fell quiet again, clearly trying to process the word. Deeper in, the dungeon gave me a surprise. A kobold larger than the others spawned ahead, its body bulkier, claws sharper, growl deeper. Not a full boss, but stronger than the usual trash. It charged immediately. I braced, sword ready, and let it come. Its claws swung. I stepped sideways, but its speed caught me off guard. The edge clipped my shoulder, the armor taking most of the blow but still rattling me. I grunted, teeth clenched, and slashed in retaliation. The blade bit into its arm, cutting deep, but not enough to drop it. It snarled, lunged again. I ducked under, drove my blade upward, and the steel pierced its stomach. The kobold let out a strangled cry, then dissolved into ash, its magic stone falling to the ground. I bent, picked it up, and exhaled slowly. Kurama's voice whispered nervously, "Okay." "Fine." I rolled my shoulder, testing the armor. A faint bruise throbbed beneath, but nothing serious. That's what the armor is for. "Armor good," Kurama said, sounding almost proud. "Yeah, worth the money." By the time I turned back toward the staircase, my pouch was stuffed with stones, and my body finally felt the ache of hours of fighting. Sweat clung to my back, my arms heavy, but every step was steady. The climb up to the surface was easier than the descent. When the light of the plaza hit me again, the sound of Arario washed over me in a wave. I stepped out, stretched my shoulders, and headed toward the guild. Inside, the lobby was just as packed as ever. Adventurers bargained loudly, clerks scribbled furiously, the air thick with voices. I moved through the crowd, straight to Einar's counter. She spotted me immediately, eyes widening. "Shiro, you went back down already?" "Yeah," I said casually, setting my pouch on the counter. Got a little carried away. Her brows knit in worry. "It's dangerous to go back so soon after your first run. You should pace yourself." I smirked faintly. "Relax, I'm here, all right." She pursed her lips, then sighed. "All right, let's see what you brought." I emptied the pouch. Magic stones clattered across the wood in a small pile, their faint glow catching the eyes of a few nearby adventurers. Einar's brows rose slightly. "This is more than I expected." "Efficient," I said, leaning on the counter. "That's me." She shook her head slightly, but there was the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips. She counted, weighed, and tallied the stones before handing me a stack of varleys. Here's your payment, but please don't push yourself too fast. Even strong adventurers fall when they overestimate themselves. I saluted lazily with 2 fingers. Duly noted. Her eyes narrowed, but the concern in them lingered as I swept up the coins. By the time I made it back to the Moonstone Inn, the sun was dipping low. I carried another bag of food, heavier this time, extra dumplings, skewers, bread, and a jug of milk. When I opened the door to my room, Kurama popped out of the pillow immediately in his chibai form, ears perked, tails wagging. His red eyes locked onto the bag. Food. I set the bag on the table, smirking. You really are predictable. Open it, he squeaked, hopping onto the table. I unwrapped the food. Kurama dove in immediately, tearing into the skewers with tiny jaws, crumbs and grease flying everywhere. His tails wagged furiously as he chewed. Slow down, I said, breaking off a dumpling for myself. You're going to choke one of these days. Worth it, he mumbled, mouth full. I chuckled, leaning back in the chair. You and food. I'm starting to think I'm just your delivery guy. He paused mid-chew, tilted his head at me, and wagged his tails faster. Delivery dad. I groaned softly, but didn't argue. I handed him a piece of bread, and he stuffed it in his mouth happily. By the time the table was bare, Kurama sprawled on his back again, belly round, tails twitching lazily. His eyes drooped shut, his breathing even. Full, he mumbled, already half asleep. I leaned back, arms crossed, watching the tiny fox doze. The sound of Arario outside filtered faintly through the window. Another day done, another bag of stones, another full stomach for the kid. Chapter 10. Choosing a Goddess. Morning came with light spilling through the window, cutting across the floorboards of my hotel room. I pushed myself up, stretching until my shoulders cracked. The armor and sword rested neatly against the chair by the table, faint scratches already showing from yesterday's use. Kurama was sprawled across the pillow in his chibai form, belly round from last night's feast, his tiny legs sticking up as his tails twitched with each sleepy breath. He snored faintly, the sound soft, almost ridiculous. I reached for the flask of water on the table, took a slow sip, and sat back down on the bed. I'd gotten what I wanted yesterday. Proper gear, proper kills, proper money. The plan was moving. But as I looked at the fox drooling onto my pillow, I couldn't help turning my thoughts back to the goddess I'd signed myself under. Hestia. Most people would have laughed if they heard I picked her. Kurama stirred, his ears twitching. His red eyes blinked open slowly. Shiro. Morning, furball. He yawned wide enough that his jaw clicked, then rolled onto his side. Hungry. Already, I raised a brow. You ate half the market last night. Still hungry, he mumbled, tails wagging weakly. I smirked faintly. You're lucky I like feeding you. He blinked up at me, then tilted his head. Thinking. Yeah, I leaned back, resting my elbows on the mattress. About Hestia. Kurama perked slightly, his tails twitching. The lady. That's right, the goddess. He tilted his head again. Why her? I gave a low chuckle. Sharp question, I'll bite. I closed my eyes briefly, running through the list in my head. Reason 1. Legitimacy. No familiar, no dungeon. Guild doesn't let anyone go down there unless they've got a god backing them. I needed a goddess, and she was the easiest door to walk through. Kurama blinked slowly, trying to process. Needed her. Needed her name, not her money. I waved a hand loosely. If I'd walked up to Loki or Freya, they'd have grilled me with questions, tied me up in rules, maybe even pulled strings to dig into me. Hephaestus would have taken one look and told me to go work in a forge. Hestia, she was desperate for members. No questions, no strings. Exactly what I needed. Kurama's ears twitched. So easy. Exactly. I sat forward, resting my arms on my knees. Reason 2, freedom. Big familiar come with chains, rules, hierarchies, orders from the top. They tell you when to fight, where to fight, and how to fight. They'd stick their noses into everything I did. I don't have the patience for that. With Hestia, she has nothing. No army, no big house, no endless lists of orders. That means I get to move how I want. The little fox wagged his tails faintly. You don't like rules. Correct, I make my own. Kurama hummed softly, like he was filing the thought away. I leaned back again, resting against the headboard this time. Reason 3, safety from politics. The big familiar are crawling with eyes. If I joined Loki Familiar, I'd have half the city watching me every time I breathed. Same with Freya. Hestia is too small, too weak. Nobody cares what a familiar does. That's exactly the kind of cover I want. Kurama's red eyes flicked up at me. Nobody watch. Right, nobody pays attention, which means nobody pays attention to you either. He blinked at that, processing. His tails twitched, slower this time. Safe. I nodded once. Safe. I picked up the sword from the chair, turning it slowly in my hands, watching the light catch on the blade. And reason 4, personality. I could have picked someone richer, smarter, stronger. But Hestia, she's clingy, dramatic, broke, sure. But she's also loyal. That counts. She won't stab me in the back. She won't abandon me. And she's too stubborn to let go once she's got someone. Kurama blinked. Stubborn. Means she won't quit on me, even if she's a pain sometimes. The fox tilted his head, ears twitching. Like you. I smirked faintly. Maybe, but don't tell anyone. Kurama curled tighter into himself, yawning again. So, you picked her because she leaves you alone. And because she won't leave me. His eyes closed halfway, but his tail still wagged faintly. Good reason. I chuckled, sliding the sword back into its sheath. Glad you approve. The rest of the morning passed slow. I strapped on my armor, tested the sword again with a few light swings in the room, the air whistling faintly. Kurama watched with half-lidded eyes, his head tilting each time the blade cut through the air. Strong, he murmured. Getting there. Need food after, he added. I rolled my eyes but smiled faintly, always with the food. By midday, I leaned back in the chair, arms folded, eyes on the ceiling. Kurama had curled up again, breathing slow, tails twitching as he drifted into another nap. I thought again about Hestia, about her bright blue eyes when I knocked on her door, about her stomping her foot, puffing her cheeks, calling me impossible, about her desperate relief when I told her I wasn't leaving. She was broke, she was a handful, but she was mine, and more importantly, she made the world leave me alone. That was enough. Chapter 11, checking on the goddess. By midday, I decided it was time to head over. I strapped on my armor, slid my new sword into its sheath, and glanced at the fox still sprawled out on my pillow. Kurama's tails twitched faintly as he stirred. Going. To see Hestia. His ears perked up, and he rolled onto his belly, blinking. The lady again. Yeah, gotta keep her happy. She's the reason I get to walk into the dungeon without a guild official tackling me. He tilted his head, processing. But she doesn't fight. True, she doesn't. That's not why she's important. Kurama blinked, then let out a small huff. Still hungry. I smirked faintly. I'll bring something back for you. Don't eat the pillow. His tails wagged slowly, then he flopped back down. Hurry. I rolled my eyes, grabbed a small bag of coins, and stepped out into the street. The city was as alive as always. Merchants calling out from stalls, adventurers clattering past in armor, children darting underfoot with sticks as makeshift swords. The smell of frying bread and roasting meat hung heavy in the air, carried by the warm breeze. I passed through the busier plaza, ignored the tavern girls waving at passing adventurers, and cut through a side street until I reached Hephaestus's estate. The familiar crest was still above the door, simple but bold. I knocked once, then again sharper. The door creaked open, and there she was. Hestia. Her twin tails bounced as she leaned out, blue eyes wide and instantly brightening when she saw me. Then her lips pursed, and she puffed her cheeks. Do you know how long I've been waiting?" she demanded, stamping one foot. "You disappear all the time. Familiar members aren't supposed to abandon their goddess, you know." I raised a brow. I was gone for a day. "That's a day too long," she snapped, pointing a finger up at me. "Do you know how boring it is sitting here with no one? I almost died of loneliness." "Sounds tragic." I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Should I alert the guild? Goddess of the hearth felled by boredom." Her cheeks flamed red. "You don't joke about that." "Relax, I'm here now." Her blue eyes narrowed, then softened slightly as she crossed her arms. "HMPH, you'd better not make a habit of this." I smirked faintly. "No promises." "Impossible," she huffed, stomping again. Then she stepped aside. "Well, are you just going to stand there, or are you coming in?" The inside was the same as always. Plain, bare, a couch sagging under its own weight, a small table with little more than dust on it. Hestia flopped onto the couch dramatically, arms spread wide. "Finally, some company. Do you know how many nights I've been stuck here alone before you showed up? Too many." I sat across from her, leaning back comfortably. "Then you're lucky I'm generous with my time." She sat up sharply, glaring at me. "Generous? You act like I should be thanking you for doing the bare minimum." "You should." Her cheeks puffed again, and she smacked the cushion next to her with both hands. "You're insufferable. And yet you're smiling." Her lips twitched as if she wanted to deny it, but she turned her face away quickly. "Shut up." Kurama's voice stirred faintly in the back of my mind. "She loud." I hid a smirk. That's her style. "Mad at you. Always doesn't mean much." "Why?" "She likes to complain, keeps her busy." Kurama gave a soft hum, as if still trying to understand. Hestia turned back toward me suddenly, her blue eyes narrowing. "So, where have you been? Don't tell me you just slept all day in some fancy hotel while your poor goddess was stuck here starving." "Not starving," I said dryly. "You've got Hephaestus watching over you. Worst case, she throws you scraps." "That's not the same," Hestia shot back, cheeks pink. "She doesn't care about me like Familiar does." "You're dramatic," I said easily, lounging further into the seat. "But fine, to answer your question, I was in the dungeon, working." Her eyes widened. "Already, you just joined me. And already bringing in stones." She leaned forward, her twin tails swaying as her eyes lit up. "Really? You're serious?" "Always." I pulled a small pouch from my belt and tossed it onto the table. The faint clink of magic stones inside made her gasp. Her hands flew to her mouth as her eyes sparkled. You really did it." I smirked faintly, impressed. "Of course I am." She jumped up, bouncing on the couch cushions, her dress swishing. "You're amazing. My familiar is amazing. Take that, Loki." I raised a brow. "Loki, S not here to hear you brag." "Doesn't matter." She twirled once, then collapsed back onto the couch, laughing. "I finally have a real adventurer. I can finally hold my head up when the others ask about my familiar. Glad to be useful." She turned to me with a wide grin. "Useful, you're the best. From now on, Hestia Familiar is going to grow and grow, all because of you. Let's not get carried away." She stuck out her tongue. "Don't ruin my moment." Kurama's voice whispered softly inside me. "Happy?" "Yeah," I murmured back silently. "She's happy." "Like food." "Pretty close." Hestia leaned back with a dreamy sigh, clasping her hands together. "Ah, I can't wait to see the look on Hephaestus's face when she finds out. She won't be able to make fun of me anymore. She'll have to admit I was right." "You're really obsessed with proving her wrong," I said. "She's always teasing me." Hestia puffed her cheeks again. "Always, but now I get to tease her back. Revenge through adventuring. Bold strategy." She glared half-heartedly, then giggled again. The rest of the afternoon slipped by in back and forth like that. She asked questions about the dungeon. How many goblins, how many kobolds, if I'd gotten hurt. I answered casually, downplaying the effort, which only made her bounce with more excitement. She flung herself across the couch at one point to tug on my arm, insisting I not overwork myself, then sulked when I teased her about being clingy. Kurama occasionally muttered from inside my head, asking who she was, why she pouted so much, why her cheeks puffed like that. I gave him simple answers, which only made him tilt his head in my mind's eye, confused but curious. By the time I stood to leave, Hestia was glowing with happiness, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her arms folded proudly. "Don't disappear tomorrow," she warned, pointing at me again. "Relax, you'll see me." "Promise." I smirked faintly. "If I say yes, will you stop pouting?" Her cheeks reddened, and she turned away quickly. "Just go." I chuckled, stepping out into the evening air. Chapter 12. Plans in Stone and Coin. The evening air was cooler by the time I left Hestia's small home behind. The sun had dipped low, spilling long shadows across the streets of Arario. Merchants shouted their last sales for the night. Adventurers stumbled out of taverns, already flushed with drink, and children raced through alleys despite their mothers scolding. I adjusted the strap of my chest plate as I walked, my sword hanging at my side. My pouch was light now, most of the day's stones already converted into coin and stored safely. I had more than enough to keep going, and my body was far from exhausted, which meant it was time to head back into the dungeon. Kurama stirred as I walked. His voice was drowsy at first, then sharper. "Again?" "Yeah," I said casually, weaving through the crowd. "Going back down. You hungry again yet?" There was a pause, then a soft, almost embarrassed murmur. "Always." I smirked faintly. "That's what I thought. Then we need more stones. More stones means more Varleys, and more Varleys means more food." His tails twitched faintly in the back of my mind, his voice thoughtful. "Stones make food. Indirectly, stones make money. Money makes food." Oh. I stepped into the plaza at Babel's base, the tower looming above, lit by lanterns now as daylight faded. Adventurers still streamed in and out of the entrance, some dragging half-empty pouches, others laughing loudly about their victories. As I descended the staircase into the dungeon, I rested one hand on the hilt of my sword and let my mind turn over a thought that had been circling since the last payout. Loot money, how to use it. The dungeon swallowed me again, the air cool, the glow of crystals lighting the rough stone walls. My boots echoed softly as I walked deeper, eyes scanning the wide passage. "Kurama," I said quietly. "I've been thinking. We need a plan for what to do with the money we make. No point wasting it." He hummed curiously. "Plan." "Exactly. Listen up." I slowed my pace, speaking evenly. 50% of everything we earn goes to you. You're the one giving me the edge when I need it, so it's only fair you get the biggest cut. There was a pause, then a confused murmur. "Me, but I don't use money." "Not yet," I said, lips twitching faintly. "But you do eat, and food costs money, so your share, it's basically the food fund. Enough to keep you full. You like that, right?" His tails wagged faintly in my head, his voice suddenly brighter. "Food fund." "Exactly, 50% locked for you, no matter what." "Okay," he said happily. I nodded once, then continued. 25% goes to me, personal cut. I've got to eat too, and it covers my living costs at the inn. No reason I should starve while you're chewing through skewers." Kurama let out a small laugh. "You need food too." "Correct. But less than me," he added quickly. I smirked faintly. "Fair, you win that one." I turned down a corridor, scanning the walls. A faint bulge trembled ahead, stone cracking. A goblin tumbled out with a screech. I drew my sword smoothly, stepped forward and cut clean through its chest. Ash scattered, the magic stone clinking against the floor. I bent, scooped it up, and slipped it into the pouch. Kurama piped up again. Then what about the rest? 10%, I said, moving forward, goes to emergency funds. Potions, medical stuff, bribes if we ever need to. Money saved for when things go bad. Bad means trouble. Oh, his voice was small, but he accepted it. Another 10%, I went on, is for needs and wants. Replacing weapons, upgrading armor, extra gear, or food for me. Basically the things that keep us moving forward. Kurama hummed softly, tails flicking. Needs and wants. Exactly. Another sound, wet stone cracking. Two kobolds spilled from the wall ahead, growling as they charged. I rolled my shoulder, gripped the sword with both hands, and stepped forward. The first leapt. I ducked under its claws and slashed across its chest, scattering it into ash. The second swiped low. I twisted aside, then drove my blade through its neck. The body collapsed and faded. Two more stones dropped into my pouch. Kurama was quiet for a moment, then spoke again, hesitant. And the last. 5%, I said, wiping the blade on my armor before sliding it back into its sheath. That goes to Hestia. There was silence, then his small voice, confused. Why, she doesn't fight. She doesn't, but she's still the goddess of the familiar. Without her, we wouldn't even be allowed in the dungeon. Kurama's ears twitched faintly in my head. But you do all the work. I do, I agreed easily. But she gives us the cover to do it. The guild sees us as legitimate because of her. That's worth something. 5%'s fair. He was quiet again, clearly turning it over in his newborn mind. And besides, I added casually, doesn't giving her a cut mean she'll be happier? Happier goddess, less nagging for me, more time for you to get food. That made him perk up immediately. Food. Exactly. His tails wagged so hard I almost felt it. Then it's good. Thought you'd say that. The rest of the descent was steady. Goblins and kobolds spawned here and there, but none gave me trouble. My sword cut cleanly, the armor turned aside scratches, and my pouch grew steadily heavier. At one point, 3 goblins spawned together, shrieking. I stepped forward, blade flashing. One slash through the first, pivot, second down, twist, third cut clean in half. 3 stones clinked onto the ground. Kurama hummed softly, clearly pleased. We get lots of food. Exactly the point. Hours passed in the stone halls. Sweat clung to my back, my arms heavy, but I kept moving. Stone by stone, fight by fight, the pouch filled until it bulged. By the time I turned back toward the staircase, I was satisfied. The climb back up was quiet, the glow of the crystals fading behind me until sunlight spilled into the plaza at Babel's base once more. The noise of Arario hit my ears again. Adventurers shouting, merchants hawking, coins clinking, the smell of roasted meat in the air. I adjusted the pouch on my belt, heavy with stones, and stepped into the street. Kurama's voice piped up again, softer this time. Shiro. Yeah. The plan is good. It is, I smirked faintly, weaving through the crowd. 50 for you, 25 for me, 10 emergency, 10 needs, 5 for Hestia. Balanced, no waste. His tails wagged faintly in my mind. Then we always have food. Always. He let out a small, satisfied sigh. Okay, chapter 13. Stones, coins, and a goddess's smile. The pouch at my side clinked with every step, heavy with the weight of stones. The sound was satisfying, steady, proof of the work I'd just put in. The streets of Arario were buzzing as always, merchants shouting about last sales of the evening, adventurers hauling tired bodies toward taverns, guards yelling at children weaving through traffic. I cut through the noise and headed straight for the guild. Kurama's voice stirred faintly in my head. Shiro. Yeah. A food soon. I smirked faintly. First stones, then coins, then food. Don't worry, you'll eat. His tails twitched faintly in my mind, his voice softer. And the lady. Hester. Yes. We'll see her after the guild. She gets her cut, remember. Kurama hummed softly, processing. 5%. Correct, you're keeping up. The guild lobby was crowded when I stepped inside. Adventurers lined up at counters, voices overlapping, some bragging, some arguing with clerks about pay, others just loud for the sake of being loud. Clerks scribbled furiously with quills, their voices firm but polite as they handled the chaos. I spotted Einar easily at a station. She was dealing with a pair of rookies, patiently explaining the difference between kobold claws and goblin fangs while they bickered with each other. Her shoulders rose and fell with a faint sigh, but her smile didn't slip. When she finally dismissed them, I stepped forward, leaning on the counter casually. Busy day. She blinked, then her green eyes widened slightly. Shiro, you're back again already. Of course, I tapped the pouch at my side. Got more for you. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she adjusted her glasses. You've been down there 2 days in a row now. Most new adventurers take breaks between dives. Most aren't me. Einar sighed softly, shaking her head. At least show me what you brought. I untied the pouch and dumped the stones across the counter. The small pile glowed faintly, drawing a few curious looks from nearby adventurers. Einar's brows rose slightly. This is quite a lot for someone on their second day. I smirked faintly, efficient like I said. She reached for her scales, weighing the stones carefully, then marked the figures down in her ledger. Her eyes flicked to me briefly. You didn't push past the first floor, did you? No, I said smoothly. Her expression tightened briefly, then she nodded. Good, don't make me worry on your second day. Wouldn't dream of it. She gave me a skeptical look, but finished counting. Then she reached into the drawer below the counter and set down a stack of Varleys. Here, your payment. I swept the coins into my hand, testing the weight, then slipped them into my belt pouch. Always a pleasure. Einar frowned slightly. Shira, I know you're confident, but please don't let that turn into recklessness. The dungeon isn't forgiving. I raised a brow, leaning slightly closer across the counter. Worried about me already? Her cheeks colored faintly, and she quickly straightened her glasses again. I'm worried about all my adventurers. Sure, I said, with a faint smirk. Her lips pressed together as if she wanted to scold me further, but she sighed instead. At least you're bringing results. Just remember to rest properly. Noted, I said easily. Kurama's voice piped up as I left the guild and stepped back into the noisy plaza. She cares. Yeah, I admitted. Like the lady. Different kind. Hester's dramatic, Einar's professional. But yeah, both care in their own way. Kurama hummed softly, then added, still hungry. I rolled my eyes faintly. Of course you are. We'll eat after Hestia. The walk to Hephaestus's estate was familiar now. The evening light stretched long across the cobbles, and adventurers staggered out of taverns already drunk, shouting loudly enough to startle stray cats from alleys. I knocked on the door, then leaned back against the wall. It flung open after only a few seconds. Hestia stood there, her twin tails bouncing, blue eyes wide with surprise. Then they narrowed quickly. You actually came back. Of course, I said casually. Didn't I say I would? You always say things like that, but then you vanish, she accused, puffing her cheeks. I was starting to think you ditched me again. I raised a brow. That easy to lose faith in me. Her cheeks flamed red. No, she flailed her arms, then huffed loudly. You're impossible. Maybe. I reached into my belt pouch, pulled out a smaller pouch, and tossed it lightly to her. She caught it clumsily, blinking. What's this? Your cut. Her eyes widened as she opened it, seeing the glint of Varley's inside. She gasped. You're giving me money. 5% every time. Her hands trembled as she clutched the pouch to her chest. You mean it. You're really serious. Always. Her eyes watered instantly as she launched herself at me, wrapping her arms around my waist and burying her face against my chest. You're the best familiar member ever. I don't care what Hephaestus says. I finally have someone amazing. I patted her head lightly. Don't cry over pocket change. It's not pocket change, she squeaked, looking up at me with watery eyes. It's proof you care. I smirked faintly. If that's all it takes, you're easy to please. Her cheeks turned bright red as she puffed them again. You're so rude. You should be more grateful I even let you join my familiar. I am, I said simply. Otherwise, no dungeon. She froze, then deflated, her lips twitching. You're not wrong. Exactly. Kurama's voice whispered softly in my head. She's happy again. Yeah, I murmured back. Food later. Yes, food later. The rest of the evening at Hester's was spent with her bouncing between excitement and dramatics. She bragged loudly about how Loki would be jealous, complained about how Hephaestus would tease her less now, then suddenly demanded I promise never to scare her by disappearing again. I teased her as always. She pouted, stamped her foot, but her grin never fully left her face. When I finally stood to leave, she clung to my arm for a moment, then let go reluctantly. Don't vanish tomorrow, I mean it. I smirked faintly. Relax, you'll see me. Her cheeks pinked as she looked away quickly. Good. I stepped out into the street again, the evening air cool against my face, Kurama's faint breath soft in my mind. Chapter 14. A white-haired recruit. The streets were quieter now, though Arario never really slept. Lanterns burned along the main road, casting long shadows across the cobbles. A few drunks staggered out of taverns, laughter spilling behind them. Shopkeepers closed shutters, guards leaned lazily against walls, and the last of the food stalls were packing up for the night. I adjusted the strap of my chest plate as I walked back toward the inn, pouch of Varley's heavy at my side. The night air was cool, sharp with the faint smell of smoke from braziers. Then I saw him. White hair, red eyes, thin frame, moving nervously down the street, clutching a pouch as if afraid someone would snatch it. Bel Cranel. He wasn't with anyone. No goddess at his side, no familiar yet. Just another hopeful rookie trying to figure out where he belonged. I slowed my steps, then changed course, heading straight for him. Bel Cranel, I said casually as I approached. He froze instantly, spinning around wide-eyed. Hey, do I know you? Not yet, I said smoothly, stopping a few paces in front of him. But I know you. You're new, no familiar. Looking for one, right? His red eyes widened further, his grip tightening on the pouch at his side. How do you? I shrugged. Call it instinct. You've been wandering around all day looking for a god or goddess to take you in, haven't you? And so far, no luck. Bell blinked rapidly, his face flushing. That's right. His shoulders slumped slightly. Nobody wanted me. I raised a brow. What do you expect? You're untested. Familiar don't like taking risks on rookies without backing, but lucky for you, I can fix that. His eyes lit up with sudden hope. You can. Of course. I leaned forward slightly, my voice even. I'm already in a familiar, Hestia familiar, small, sure, but real, and she's looking for members. I can get you in. No begging, no doors slammed in your face. Just one introduction and you're set. Bell's mouth fell open, his hands trembling slightly. Familiar, really. Really, I confirmed easily. Then I held up a finger, but nothing comes free. His expression froze. Kurama's voice stirred faintly in my head. Shiro. Yeah. What are you doing? Negotiating. I looked Bell squarely in the eye. Here's the deal. I bring you to Hestia. I vouch for you. You get the Falna, you get dungeon rights, you get everything you've been chasing. In return, 50% of everything you earn in the dungeon comes to me. His red eyes went wide again. F50. That's right, I said smoothly, folding my arms. Half, you keep the other half. You still make money, you still grow, you still eat. But without me, you don't even get in the door, so half. Bell stammered, his face red. That's a lot. It's fair, I said firmly. I'm not just giving you charity, I'm buying you entry into the dungeon. That's worth half your take it or leave it. Kurama's voice piped up again, hesitant. Isn't that bad? Bad, I echoed silently, smirking faintly. Not at all, it's a win-win-win-win. I get money, you get food, Bell gets a familiar, Hestia gets another member, everybody wins. Kurama was quiet, but I could feel his little tails flicking in thought. Win, win, win. Exactly. Bell looked down, clutching his pouch tighter, trembling slightly. He bit his lip, his voice small. Aye, if it means I can finally join, then I'll do it. I smirked faintly. Good answer. His eyes lifted to mine, nervous but determined. Please take me to your goddess. Follow me, I said, turning. The walk back toward Hephaestus's estate was filled with Bell's nervous chatter. He asked about Hestia, about the familiar, about what kind of adventurer I was. I answered just enough to keep him from exploding with anxiety, never giving too much detail. Kurama stirred faintly in my mind, his voice soft. He's small. Smaller than me, I agreed, but eager. He's scared, Kurama added. Of course he is, he's new. But he wants it. Exactly, that's why this works. By the time we reached the door, Bell was practically vibrating with nerves. He clutched his pouch like it was his lifeline, his red eyes darting nervously toward the door. You'll be fine, I said casually, knocking once. The door opened almost instantly. Hestia stood there, her twin tails bouncing, her blue eyes narrowing the second she saw me. You disappeared again. Her words cut off when she noticed Bell standing awkwardly behind me, his face red, his hands fidgeting. And who's this? She asked, eyes narrowing suspiciously. I gestured smoothly. Your next familiar member. Hestia blinked. Eh? Bell bowed so fast he almost smacked his head on the doorframe. Please let me join your familiar. Hestia's blue eyes went wide, sparkling instantly. Wait, really? You want to join me? Yes, Bell squeaked, his voice desperate. I've been looking everywhere, but nobody would take me, and Shiro said. He cut himself off, blushing furiously. Hestia turned to me, eyes wide. You did this. I smirked faintly. Of course, you're welcome. She threw herself at me instantly, hugging me tight. You're the best. You're amazing. I knew I picked the right first familiar member. Bell blinked, confused. Eh? Hestia let go, twirling once in excitement. Another member. My familiar is growing. Take that, Loki. Bell stood frozen, still bowing slightly, unsure what to do. Relax, I told him casually. She's happy. You're in. Ah, really? Bell gasped. Hestia spun toward him, her blue eyes shining. Of course you are. Welcome to Hestia Familiar. Bell's face lit up instantly, his whole body trembling with relief. Thank you. Kurama's voice whispered faintly. He's happy too. Of course, I replied silently. That's how the deal works. Win-win-win-win, Kurama repeated slowly, almost proudly. I smirked faintly. Exactly. Hestia practically dragged Bell inside, bouncing with energy as she demanded his details for the Falna. Bell stammered through every answer, blushing at her cheerfulness, while I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, watching. When she finally finished, she looked up at me with glowing eyes. We're growing, we're finally growing, and it's all thanks to you. Always happy to deliver, I said smoothly. She pouted faintly. You always sound so smug. Because I always am. She puffed her cheeks, but her grin broke through a moment later. Bell looked at me nervously, his red eyes uncertain. I'll do my best, I won't let you down. Good, I said simply, because half your earnings are mine. His face turned red again, but he nodded quickly. Why, yes. Kurama's tails flicked faintly in my head, his small voice amused. He said yes. Of course he did, I said silently. Chapter 15. Paperwork and Percentages. Morning light spilled through the thin curtains of the Moonstone Inn. The city was already awake outside. The shouts of merchants setting up stalls, the clatter of boots from adventurers heading to Babel, the squeals of children chasing each other down cobbled streets. I stretched, rolled my shoulders, and buckled on my armor. My sword slid easily into its sheath. The pouch of Varley's from yesterday was secure on my belt, heavy enough to put me in a good mood. Kurama stirred in the back of my mind, yawning softly. Morning. Morning, I said, adjusting the chest plate strap. Food. After business. His tails flicked faintly in my head, but he didn't argue. The boy. Bell, yeah, today we take him to the guild. Time to make him official. Then he can fight too, Kurama asked innocently. Exactly. He fights, he earns, we split. Everybody wins. Kurama hummed softly, tails twitching. Win, win, win. I smirked faintly. You're getting it. Bell was waiting awkwardly outside when I stepped out of the inn. He stood stiffly on the corner, clutching his pouch, his white hair catching the morning light. His red eyes lit up instantly when he saw me. S.H. Shiro-san, he bowed quickly. Good morning. Relax, I said casually, stepping up beside him. No need to bow every time you see me. His face reddened. Sorry, I'm just grateful. You'll get used to it. I jerked my head toward Babel's towering form in the distance. Guild first. Let's get you registered. Bell nodded quickly, practically bouncing on his heels. The guild lobby was bustling when we arrived. Adventurers lined up at counters, handing over pouches of stones. Clerks scribbled furiously, their voices raised to be heard over the din. The smell of ink, parchment, and steel filled the air. Bell froze just inside the doorway, eyes wide, clutching his pouch tightly. So many people. Of course, I said smoothly. This is where all the money in the city gets processed. You'll get used to it. He nodded nervously, sticking close behind me as I cut through the crowd. Einar spotted me instantly. Her brows knit together, then her green eyes narrowed slightly as I approached. Shiro, back again. Of course, I said smoothly. This time, business for someone else. Her eyes flicked to Bell, who was practically shrinking behind me. And this is... Bell Cranel, I said, resting a hand on his shoulder to nudge him forward. New member of Hestia Familia. Einar's brows shot up. Hestia Familia. Bell bowed so fast, he nearly knocked his head against the counter. Please take care of me. Einar blinked, then sighed softly, adjusting her glasses. You're serious? Always. Her eyes flicked back to me, suspicion lingering, but she nodded. All right, then let's get him registered. Kurama's voice piped up curiously in my head. What's registered? Means paperwork, I explained silently. Makes it official. Then he's allowed. Exactly. That's how the guild keeps things clean. No paperwork, no dungeon. Kurama hummed softly. So now he wins too. Exactly, I said again, lips twitching faintly. Einar pulled out a fresh sheet of parchment and a quill. Bell Cranel, correct. Please provide your details here. Age, home, village, basic information. The familiar is Hestia, yes. Bell scrambled to obey, his hand shaking slightly as he filled in the parchment. He glanced up at me more than once, as if afraid he'd write something wrong. Relax, I said easily. It's not an exam. He flushed red, but kept writing. Einar checked his work once he was done, then stamped the parchment with the guild seal. There, officially recognized. Bell Cranel, member of Hestia Familia. Bell's eyes widened, shining with relief. Thank you. Einar smiled faintly. Welcome to Arario's Adventurers, Belle. Please remember to act responsibly. The dungeon is dangerous. I'll take care of him, I cut in smoothly. Einar gave me a pointed look. See that you do. Kurama murmured softly in my head. He's happy. Of course, I said, smirking faintly as Bell bowed again to Einar. First time in his life he's gotten what he wanted, all thanks to me. Win, 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 Kurama repeated proudly. Exactly. We stepped back out into the sunlight, Bell nearly tripping over his own feet in his excitement. He turned to me, red eyes shining. S.H. Shiro-san, thank you so much. If not for you, I don't think I'd have ever gotten in. I smirked faintly. Told you, worth half your take, isn't it? His face went red again, but he nodded quickly. Why, yes, it's fair. Kurama's voice chimed softly. He said fair. Because it is, I murmured back. Bell beamed, clutching his pouch tightly to his chest. The walk back toward Hestya's place was filled with Bell's eager chatter. He asked what the dungeon was like, what weapons he should buy, how strong monsters were. I answered casually, dropping just enough detail to keep him hanging on my words. Hestya was waiting outside when we arrived, her twin tails bouncing. Her blue eyes lit up instantly when she saw Bell, then she practically jumped on the spot. You're back, and you brought him again. Bell bowed low, his face red. G-Goddess Hestya, please continue to take care of me. Hestya's eyes sparkled as she grabbed his hands. Of course, you're officially part of my familia now. I finally have more than one member, she twirled dramatically, laughing. Take that, Loki. I leaned casually against the wall, smirking faintly as she celebrated. Bell looked overwhelmed, his face flushed as he glanced between us. I'll do my best. You'd better, I said easily. Half your earnings, remember. He nodded quickly, determined. Yes. Hestya blinked, tilting her head. Half his what? Nothing you need to worry about, I said smoothly. Her blue eyes narrowed, suspicious, but then she shrugged and went back to gushing over Bell. Kurama's voice whispered softly, She's happy too. Everyone's happy, I replied. That's how I like it. Then it's good, Kurama murmured, content. By the time the sun dipped lower, Bell was practically glowing. Hestya was buzzing with energy, and I was already calculating the extra Valis that would start flowing my way. Another win, Chapter 16, outfitting a rookie. The city was already alive when I stepped out of the inn the next morning. The smell of fresh bread drifted from bakeries, smiths, hammers rang out down the road, and adventurers clattered past with weapons on their backs.